What's up, guys? I figured I'd see how the audio goes with my headphones, because I may be able to make a couple of videos while I'm on the go this week, just so I can sort of catch up a bit. But I'm gonna get straight into the Captain America, First Avenger references and Easter eggs and stuff. As with all of my videos so far, I did the research the week that I was supposed to watch the movie. It's just the upload and the filming that I'm not so good at doing, and keeping on top of and stuff. But yeah, I am keeping up to date with it. This week is Captain America again, for Winter Soldier, if you're keeping up to date. So let's get straight into it. First reference is, are you the guys from Washington? This is said by a guy in an orange flak jacket in reference to two guys that just turned up. They reply with, how many visitors do you get out here? These two men work for S.H.I.E.L.D. In Winter Soldier. We find out that the headquarters, like the main headquarters for S.H.I.E.L.D., is the Triskelion in Washington, D.C. Drew a mental blank there. How did I draw a mental blank? Anyway, the next one is that when they ask why no one's ever sort of found it before, the guy replies with, "You don't understand. The landscape's changing all the time out here." This feels like a reference to the deleted scene from Hulk, where he's in the snow and he punches because he tries to shoot himself in like he puts a gun in his mouth, pulls the trigger. The Hulk spits the bullet out, and because he's so enraged, smashes his hands down, causes a massive like avalanche sort of thing, which could quite possibly have turned the Valkyrie up and made it stick out and stuff. So we have the Hulk to thank for the Captain America movies. The next one is Tonsberg, Norway. This is the little village that was attacked by frost giants in Thor, and is the little village that gets attacked by Hydra in Captain America. So the history of Tonsberg is kind of sad. We then get to see the Hydra badge on the front of the car. I only learnt this today while researching and just generally watching other YouTube videos, that it is actually the like a skeletal bust, I guess, of Alvius, who is an Inhuman known in Ages of S.H.I.E.L.D. as Hive. And if you look at it, look at him. If you look at what Hive actually looks like, there's no mistaking that he was the inspiration for that badge. He's got sort of tentacle things coming off his head instead of hair, sort of like Davy Jones has tentacles for his beard in the Pirates of the Caribbean movie. So yeah, it's definitely not a 9-headed dragon, that's for sure. There's then references to the fact that Johann Schmidt is the Red Skull by being backlit, and then by only being shown like his boots and his hands as he walks down the rubble into the church. The effigy on top of the coffin that he ends up pushing off single-handedly, that is a carving of Thor. So that's the first of many Thor Asgardian references here. The next one is we get a fake Tesseract, which, side note, a Tesseract's an actual geometric, geometry, an actual geometric shape that is made up of 12 squares. So you got the 4 on the outside, the 4 that make the inner cube, and the 4 squares in between each vertice. So that's an Iron Man 2 reference to the number 12. I don't think I covered it because I don't think when I made that video I was really thinking about the number 12. But there's a reference later on in this movie to 12, so that's why I'm thinking about it now. So I apologise that I didn't get all of the references in Iron Man 2, but there is a drawing of the Tesseract in Iron Man 2 that shows the 12 faces of the Tesseract. However, to come back and bring this back on topic for Captain America, the Tesseract is the cosmic cube of the MCU, which is a device, an object, a thing that Red Skull is sort of obsessed with in the comics. The jewel of Odin's treasure room is the Tesseract. The end of Avengers, Thor actually takes it back to be put back in the vault, which is the same vault that gave us the Tablet of Life and Time, and the Eternal Flame, and the Warlock's Eye, and the Infinity Gauntlet. Then we get to see Yggdrasil. There is a theory for one of the Marvel characters in the MCU being a living embodiment of Yggdrasil, and I'll go into that for that movie's Easter eggs and references, and I may even go a little bit more in depth because the full sort of theory is sort of sad, and it makes me just love the character more. But Yggdrasil is said to be the guardian of wisdom. Odin himself is the Norse god of wisdom and the wind as well, which puts him as a sky god at the top, and therefore makes sense why Thor is his successor. We also see the Midgard serpent. That's the thing that has the eye, that is the button. It's said to be the thing that hatched out of the world's egg, which is what Earth was, and then the serpent hatched out of it and created life, sort of in a similar way to how in Australian Aboriginal mythology the rainbow serpent made rivers and streams and mountains and valleys and gorges and all sorts of other natural landscapes. We then get to see another reference to Red Skull. This time we've now seen Hugo Weaving's face, but for this reference he adjusts his mask, as we later learn it to be, to cover up a little bit of red that comes up under his eye after he's just killed people and done all this excessive like movements and stuff. We then cut to Steve trying to enroll into the army for the 4th or 5th time, and this is where we learn that his dad was part of the was in the army in the First World War, and was part of the 107th. The 107th, if that sounds familiar, is the army unit that Bucky was a part of. So that's interesting and weird at the same time. Pure coincidence or deliberately put in, I don't know, but something's up with the 107th. We then get to see Steve use a bin lid as a reference to his shield that he will later get from Howard Stark. We get to see the Unisphere at the World's Fair. This is the same sphere that Tony uses to blow up hammer drones in Iron Man 2. We then get to see, and I've worded it this way specifically because it makes 2 Easter eggs out of 1, Phineas Horton's synthetic man. Now the first part and the most famous part is the synthetic man part, because we all know that that's Jim Hammond, the Human Torch, and nothing more needs to be said about that. It's on so many lists, even on lists where it's like references you won't have seen, and there's like dozens of them, and they all have this one. It's like, if I didn't see it, why is it on every list? Obviously, lots of people saw it. But the thing that people sort of missed was the reference to Phineas Horton, who is actually the creator of the android. Yes, the android's standing there in his case, and we don't get to see him flame up or anything. He's wearing a red unitard though, so like it's kind of hard to not know that he's a fire character. Which could also be a little sort of reference to the fact that Chris Evans played Johnny Storm, who is the second Human Torch in the original Fantastic Four films from like 2003, 2004. Could also be a reference to that, but Phineas Horton's name is clearly put above the tank, so that you know that they've still brought him in as well. It's not just that Howard Stark's invented this, he's actually doing what Tony does in Iron Man 2, which is rent out the different booths and stuff for other inventors. We then get to see Abraham Erskine for the first time in an SSR military sort of enlistment booth at the fair. So that's, that lets us know that he's definitely going to be the one that turns him into Captain America, and fans of the comics would have known from that point on that, Steve's definitely going to get some super soldier serum injected into him in the next 5 minutes. An interesting note that I have here as well is that the first time we see him try to enlist, he gets a 4F planted on his thing, and when he's talking to Erskine puts a 1A on there. These are actual they're historically accurate and everything. And yeah, also pure coincidence as well, but it's funny how the 4F are very angular looking letters, almost like it's supposed to be a reference to the swastika, which was the Nazi symbol. So you've got the 4 goes like this, and the F's like this, so you've got sort of this thing like this. You just missed in 2 arms of the swastika. Just interesting things to note from history that may have referenced the design and stuff of some of the things in the film. The first time we see Arnim Zola, it's when his image is being put up on a little circular screen, and then we kind of pan across and see him looking into this sort of telescope-looking thing. In the comics, Arnim Zola has a robotic body, and his face is displayed on a screen on the robotic body's stomach, which is also circular. We then get to meet Gilmore Hodge, who is Colonel Phillips' preferred pick for the Super Soldier program. He is also a character from the comic books, was in the war. I think there's some more notable things about him, but it's been a while since I actually did the research for this, that my shorthand just isn't jogging the memories. We then get a line from Colonel Phillips where he says that General Patton has said that, trying to remember the line here, wars are fought with weapons, but they're won by men. And then he goes on to continue, we're going to win because we have the best men. The reference in that line is the first 2 words. It's the person that he makes a reference to. Where am I? Down there. George S. Patton was an actual military colonel. So, or general, or whatever it was that he was. So he's actually a historical character that they've sort of incorporated into this to, again, help make this feel a lot more real. because obviously we've just come from having Thor and being in space and dealing with aliens and stuff. And then this movie has its mystic sort of side, so the more grounded you can keep Captain America's side of things, the easier it is for the rest of it to be believable. We then get to hear Johann Schmidt's name sort of for the first time. The name always makes me laugh whenever I hear it. Obviously I didn't laugh just now because I'm trying to be a little bit more professional for the video, but Johann Schmidt translates from German to English as John Smith. So yeah, I think the only thing that could have made it funnier is if Brad Pitt had played the character. I would have just lost it. We then get to see the serum injection sequence, and the serum is blue, just like the one from Hulk, so we know that they are the same serum. And then the other bit in this is that Erskine tells the watching audience that he's going to be saturated with Vita rays. Now, this is interesting because it means the only mistake Bruce Banner made was using gamma rays instead of Vita rays. He just used the wrong frequency of electromagnetic wave. So obviously, either it was too fast or too slow, and that's had an adverse effect on the serum, which has obviously led to the creation of Hulk. But yeah, that small slip up was all it was. And that's just so close that it's sort of got to be a bit of a reference. But Vita rays and the blue serum are also from the comics. And I'm remembering that there's something else about the serum being blue, and I'm not remembering what it is at the moment. But yeah, I'll probably look it up and figure out what it was again. No, you know what? Let's do it now. I'll do it now. What is this thing doing? I wanna go into the internet, please. When wants to load? Cool. Here we go. We'll use the MCU's wiki page. Here we go, trivia. Please tell me it has something. No, I've already done that one. Yeah, it's not coming up, but I just think I remember there being some sort of a reference to it being blue for a particular reason in the film. I'll look it up and I'll put it in before the Avengers Easter eggs in its video. We then get to see Cap use a taxi door as a shield. It even has a star on the door, just in case you didn't know that he was going to get a shield with a big star in the center of it. Then we have I can't remember what the exact reference in the film is to Aryan perfection. I think it may be a passing line by Schmidt, come to think of it, while he's sort of saying that they're not going to grow in they're not going to grow in Hitler's shadow anymore. They have to become their own entity. This is right after the reference to the Red Skull has been indulged long enough. By this point, we know he's the Red Skull, just from being comic fans, or the subtle references to there's something not being quite right with his face. So as soon as I say Red Skull, you have to know who he is. But yeah, the Aryan perfection is funny because Hitler himself was not part of this elite group of blonde hair and blue eyes. But do you know who is? Steve. Steve Rogers is Aryan perfection. He has blonde hair and blue eyes. And after the super soldier serum, he is the peak a human can be. So it's kind of ironic that Hitler's sort of greatest enemy from that point onwards, sort of like America's golden boy, is part of the group that he believes should rule the world. Which, if you are a history buff and you want to sort of add this into it for a little bit of shits and giggles, then it makes sense why Hitler then went and committed suicide or whatever it was that he did. Because I know he didn't get captured. And if he didn't die way back then, he's definitely dead now. So, yeah. We then get to see the Hitler Punch multiple times. We get to see it in Milwaukee and in Chicago and in Philadelphia and in Milwaukee, and I'm surprised that I remembered at least those 4 names, because there's a lot of different, there's a montage there where he's just laying into Hitler, as part of the bonds, or whatever they are, little stage act that he does. And if you didn't know what that was a reference to, literally the next shot tells you what it's a reference to, because you actually get to see the cover of issue 1, which is way up there. It's on my poster behind me. So, and it's funny because it doesn't actually say anything about being Marvel Comics. The 2 before it say Marvel Comics, but they're actually published by Marvel's predecessor, Timely. It didn't become Marvel Comics till much later. And this was at a time when they'd actually sort of surrendered the Captain America character to sort of lighter rest sort of thing. And it wasn't until, I think, like the second issue of Avengers where they decided to bring him back and put him in as part of the Avengers. And then obviously with that they then revamped Namor, and they revamped a couple of the other characters from the golden age of superheroes. We then get to meet a character who is played by an actress that also played Meredith Quill. This character doesn't get named in the film. She probably has a name in the credits or something, but more than likely it's just Captain America fan or something like that. Now, yes, she played Meredith Quill, and that ties her directly into Guardians of the Galaxy, but if we're wanting to keep the shared universe here and not royally screw up the timeline, because Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 clearly shows a young Meredith Quill, again played by the same actress, in like 1960 or 1970 or probably 1970 actually, to be honest, and she's about 20, which means that she would have been born 1950, which is about 10 years after this, which makes this character more than likely, given that she's probably about 21 there, more than likely makes it Meredith's mother and therefore Peter's grandmother, who, if she is at all in that first sequence not the first sequence, the sort of flashback sequence of Guardians of the Galaxy, we're not really shown the grandmother too much. The grandfather has a couple of little bits to do with him, but we don't really get to see the grandmother, so there's no way of knowing for certain. But yeah, just to chuck a little theory in there as well, I reckon it's Peter's grandmother, which therefore makes the inherent leadership skills, because her grandmother would have, his grandmother would have met Captain America. He would have sort of known about Captain America as like a cultural hero. And then, yeah, he's basically got his own sort of version of a superhero thing going with his rocket boots and what have you. So the legacy, I guess, Cap could have rubbed off on Peter. I digress. The next bit is a Disney reference. Disney owns Marvel these days, so wherever I can chuck in a Disney reference, I'm going to. One of the guys calls out to Captain America at one point, says, "Yeah, you do that, Tinkerbell." Tinkerbell is obviously the fairy from Peter Pan, and you might be wondering what the connection is. Sure, you've referenced the fairy from a cartoon that was produced by Disney years before, but what's the connection? Well, it's actually a derogative connection, and in today's society, such derogative terms are frowned upon quite heavily. But basically, the guy is saying that with the costume that he has on and everything, that he thinks that Captain America is gay. Because he's a fairy, and that's what fairies were back then. If a man was a little bit too effeminate, he was called a fairy, and that just meant that he was gay. So, yeah, kind of horrible, but there you have it. We then get Peggy Carter shows up, and in the conversation where she asks if he should be if his only options are a lab rat or a dancing monkey, Cap says, "My audience is usually a little bit more 12. This is not just a drop of the number 12 again, but it's a reference to the kids that used to attend and were very vocal in his sort of stage career that he had before coming out to the front. So while it makes continuity sense, it is also he could have chosen 13, could have chosen 11, could have picked 10. 10's a nice short word as well, but he picked 12. So got to go in there because it's that 12 reference once again. He then takes the helmet from the girl whose helmet had the letter A on it. In the comics, Cap's cow usually has the letter A on his forehead, so that was a reference to that. In the scene where we see the Hydra factories up on the wall and Bucky having just come out of some form of programming or something, probably the start of their turning him into the Winter Soldier, you know, probably. We get to see a blueprint for the robotic suit that I was talking about earlier. Arnim Zola picks it up, puts it in his bag before he runs out the door. And yeah, after the whole scene of Cap rescuing the 107th from the factory, we get to see Stan Lee's cameo, where he plays a military general attending the awards ceremony in New York for Captain America, who doesn't turn up because he's busy planning how they're going to move forward in their military campaign. And then the last reference that I could sort of find, because the end of the film is just a lot more of... actually, no, there is one more that I didn't write down because I didn't make the connection before. But basically the next sort of half hour is just the action sequence at the end where they fight their way into the factory, fight their way through the factory. Steve kisses Peggy, jumps onto the Valkyrie, which, by the way, another Thor and Norse mythology reference there. But yeah, all of that's just sort of action. But the reference before that is when they're all sitting around the table having beers and stuff. No one explicitly says it, but this is where the Howling Commandos first formed. The Howling Commandos are from the comics, although in that they operated with Sergeant Nick Fury, who I feel like they could have still put in the MCU, particularly with the retcon that happened after the Ultimates version, which is the one that Samuel L. Jackson is portraying, became so popular in the same way that Miles Morales became popular. Sergeant Nick Fury, yes, also a Nick Fury, was a white man with an eye patch. There's something about eye patches in Marvel that just screams leadership for some reason. But yeah, he was a white male with brown hair, and in his comics, Sergeant Fury and the Howling Commandos, you also get characters like Dum Dum Dugan, Junior Juniper, Pinky Pinkerton, Happy Sam Sawyer, Fallsworth, Jim Morita, the rest that goes on. And so, yeah, so they're all sitting around the table there, and that's when that first forms. And then the only other reference that I have and can think of in this film comes in that current day scene, and that is that when he wakes up, first of all, he has an SSR shirt on. It sort of makes a bit of sense why they'd put that on him. But the real reference here is the woman that walks in, and she looks a lot like Hayley Atwell's Peggy Carter. Mental blank for a second there. So the missed opportunity there, as some people were saying or believe, is that they missed that opportunity to make her Agent 13 and therefore a descendant of Peggy Carter. But as we find out later on in Civil War, it's not that she was descendant of Peggy Carter, she was Peggy Carter's niece, or great niece or something. So, yeah. So there you go. That's all the Easter eggs and references that I could find. I know I left out like a large chunk at the end there, where there could have potentially been some references, because like even in like the fight scenes in all of the other films up until now, there's been references to one thing or another. But yeah, if I did miss any from that section, please leave them down in the comments. Would love to see or be able to find them myself. So if I read it, know sort of where it's going to be, I can keep an eye out for it. And yeah, if you like this video, guys, please give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and all that other fun jazz. And until next time, guys, keep raising hell.